Hi, my name is Bennett Garfinkel, here at Garfinkel Schwartz. We're in the Maitland office today. I deal with a lot of the medical aspects on our cases. I help do research, and I help find physicians for specific treatments and for specific ailments. And today I want to talk to you about a relatively unknown but rapidly increasing in diagnosis disease. It's a respiratory disease called constrictive bronchiolitis. Again, that's constrictive bronchiolitis. It's also called bronchiolitis obliterans. And that's a mouthful, but what happens in this respiratory disease is scar tissue develops in the lungs, which prevents the cells that absorb oxygen from getting oxygen into your blood. And these scar tissue and this fibrosis, as it's called, which restricts airflow to your lungs, is caused by exposure to toxic chemicals. And while the government denies any link between burn pits and constrictive bronchiolitis, the VA just began a registry to track pulmonary diseases and cancer development from exposure to burn pits. Burn pits are something like this generation's Agent Orange. On bases very developed military bases, such as Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan, which at one point housed over 40,000 troops and civilian contractors, all of the trash, tons of trash, metric tons of trash, were burned just into the air, and plastic and metal and even instances of human body parts were burned. And when the air wafted through over the soldiers, it exposed them to many toxic chemicals, many of which are correlated or have a link to forming this scar tissue in this really terrible respiratory illness. Symptoms that an individual with COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, it's similar to constrictive bronchiolitis. But because constrictive bronchiolitis is such a new development, so many troops are coming home, so many civilian contractors are coming home with these respiratory ailments, many pulmonologists don't exactly know what constrictive bronchiolitis is because of its rarity before. And it's very difficult to diagnose. A normal chest x-ray doesn't show the specific scar tissue in the small little passageways in the lungs. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health in 2004 published a standard on how to diagnose constrictive bronchiolitis or bronchiolitis obliterans. And they include, at first, a chest x-ray, and that's the first step, and that's usually inconclusive. The next step is called spirometry, and that's basically lung volume tests where you blow into the tube and the pulmonologist can figure out if there's any air that's being trapped in these passageways in your lungs. The next step is a high-resolution computed tomography, or a CT scan. And what they'll have you do is breathe in and breathe out during the CT scan to be able to recognize the specific patterns of the scar tissue that are found in constrictive bronchiolitis. And again, specialists, even within the field of pulmonology, are usually required to make this diagnosis because at one point it was such a rare disease, only found in very small populations of individuals. And now, since thousands and thousands of troops are returning home and thousands of civilian contractors are returning home with symptoms such as fatigue, shortness of breath, and inability to lift or move things, a lack of energy, all of this may be indicative of constrictive bronchiolitis. And once you've had those specific tests that include chest x-ray, the spirometry or lung volume, the CT scan, if those are all inconclusive but still signs are pointing to a diagnosis of constrictive bronchiolitis, which at this point is untreatable, what is necessary sometimes is an invasive lung biopsy, where they'll have to put you under general anesthesia and take a portion of your lung and look at it through a microscope and see if they can see the patterns that are specific to constrictive bronchiolitis or bronchiolitis obliterans. Again, these burn pits are strongly associated. There's a very high correlation between the toxins in the burn pits and the development of severe respiratory illnesses such as constrictive bronchiolitis, and also developments of cancer as well. Furthermore, dust storms, especially in sandy areas such as Iraq or Afghanistan, individuals, civilian contractors exposed to these dust storms in country or burn pits in country may develop these very, very specific and rare disorders that only a pulmonologist with specialty knowledge could possibly diagnose. And it's a very difficult illness to cope with. At this point, it's untreatable. Individuals are unlikely to be able to have a normal life or a normal job. And here at Garfinkel Schwartz, we represent quite a few of these clients, and we work very hard to get them the medical benefits that they deserve. And part of my job here is to look through medical records and find links between associations with burn pits or dust storms and findings back in the States or findings of doctors in country, and link those. And furthermore, we can refer you to specific pulmonologists, experts in their field, that can do these very specific tests and can work towards an official diagnosis of constrictive bronchiolitis. Again, my name is Bennett Garfinkel. I'm not an attorney or a physician, but I am the medical and legal researcher here at Garfinkel Schwartz to help support these cases with the very difficult, rare, and niche areas of medical illnesses found in civilian contractors. Here at the Maitland offices of Garfinkel Schwartz, we're a 4-generation family law firm. My role here as a medical and legal researcher, because I'm neither a physician nor a lawyer, but I do have some medical training, some research experience, and what I do here is I look through medical records, and I also research extensively through the scientific literature and find experts in their field, physicians that are extremely competent and research on areas of very, very specific medical disorders, specifically constrictive bronchiolitis, which is an extremely rare respiratory illness without a cure, but that's strongly associated. The research shows that burn pits and the toxic chemicals in burn pits, plus dust storms and silica, can cause severe respiratory illnesses that only an expert in the field can diagnose.